People make low-budget B-movies and make do without good financial backing, high-end studios, veteran actors, and sometimes they even lack a good director. They almost always never aim to be anything more than what they are supposed to be, never taking themselves too seriously. However, every once in a while, a B-movie arrives that thrills the audience and critics alike because they were made with one purpose only, and it was the entertainment of their viewers. In this video, we are going to explore these very dark horses of cinema. But before we begin, please consider subscribing to us. It's a small click from you, but it goes a long way for us. So pack up a big bag of popcorn as we embark on our search for the next watch. Number 1. The Incredible Shrinking Man, 1957. Robert Carey and his wife Louise were on vacation when a strange mist enveloped Robert, leaving a metallic residue on him. But what happens with a bit of fog, Robert thought. Thinking nothing of it, Robert carried on with his life. But, when he got exposed to insecticides one day, he found out that he was getting shorter.
Still get 5 foot 11 inches, Mr. Carey.
I've been 6'1" since I was 17.
With the height of 6 inches, he is forced to live in a dollhouse, where his house cat pursues him. In another incident, Robert ends up locked in the basement of his house, where he had to find shelter and nourishment for survival, while fighting a giant spider. What will become of poor little Robert? Director Jack Arnold envisioned the story based on writer Richard Matheson's novel of the same name. But what blows your mind is that the special effects done for the film seem effortless for a small-budgeted film. The set designs were huge to make the protagonist look smaller, and clearly, much thought must have been given to the same. Scenes were shot separately and combined later to give the feel of everything happening at once. Of course, half the credit goes to the cast for flawlessly executing the director's vision. Grant Williams as Robert Carey, Randy Stewart as his wife, Louise Carey, were phenomenal in their crafts and shared great chemistry.
And I felt my body dwindling, melt, becoming nothing. My fears melted away, and in their place came acceptance.
Number 2. The Haunted Palace, 1963. In the 18th century Arkham, New England, lived a warlock named Joseph Curwen, who worshipped Satan to raise the dead. Suffice to say, his plans failed when the townspeople caught him and burned him alive. But before he died, he placed a curse on the people, according to which he shall rise again, and the families of his murderers will have to bear the curse.
So shall I rise from the dead. Children and your children's children shall have just cause to regret the actions of this night.
110 years later, the great-great-grandson of Joseph Curwen named Charles Dexter Ward arrives at Arkham to look at his inheritance, which was the Haunted Palace. The spirit of Joseph takes possession of Charles's body and sets on a vengeance trip, killing the descendants of his murderers. First things first, The Haunted Palace is based on H.P. Lovecraft's novella The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, and that's why it's a definite treat to all Lovecraft fans. The film introduces its viewers with Lovecraftian objects like Necronomicon, the Book of the Dead, and elder gods such as Cthulhu. The director, Roger Corman, envisioned this film as a perfect horror movie for the audience. The story is gripping and full of suspense, the sets and scares are placed and timed with perfection. Vincent Price, who played a double role as both Charles Dexter Ward and Joseph Curwen, was phenomenal. If nothing else, you should watch this film to explore a stunning Lovecraftian story.
Charles, are you sure you're all right?
Perfectly sure, my dear. Perfectly sure.
Number 3. Crippled Avengers, 1978. Unable to recover from the loss of his son's hands and the slaying of his wife, a rich kung fu expert turns into a bullying and evil warlord of his town. He gave his son an articulated metal hand, and the duo set forth on their torture spree. Together, they blind a traveler, render the blacksmith deaf and mute, chop off a passerby's feet, and vandalize the man who tries to put a stop to their notorious behavior. The 4 victims band together and find an old kung fu master to overcome their handicap and train to become the Crippled Avengers. This film is probably the campiest version of Die Hard's John McClane. I mean, 4 people who just happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time become heroes to the common folk. With that as the film's premise, it suffices to say that the film had potential. The director Che Chang visioned the impossible hero movie by making the heroes handicapped, but it all beautifully ties down in the climax. Crippled Avengers knew enough not to take itself seriously, and that's probably the reason the film succeeded both critically and commercially. Number 4, The Return of the Living Dead, 1985. In a medical firm named Oneida, 2 incompetent employees release toxic gas into the air, which causes the dead to come alive and go on a rampage throughout Louisville, Kentucky. The 1985 comedy horror takes a different direction than most movies in the Living Dead franchise when it comes to zombie behavior. Here, the zombies eat the human brain rather than the flesh. They can run and speak as well, which poses a greater risk for humankind than when the zombies slow walk to your death. With his 2 employees, his friend, and some teenagers, the warehouse owner takes it upon himself to protect the town. They contact the survived townsfolk, the police, and even involve the military to fend off the zombie invasion. Even with a small budget, the film stood out better than most in the Living Dead franchise. Though the plot occurs pretty much the same, the film is focused more on humor and horror, with its killer score, menacing effects for zombies, and the ironic twist in the climax. Director Dan O'Bannon never allows his film to feel tiring, because he kept the script and dialogues clever. The Return of the Living Dead is much more than gory brain-sucking beasts, although the gore and violence is a significant part of it all. If you love the zombie genre, you will love The Return of the Living Dead, and the phenomenal performances by the cast, which includes Clu Gulager, James Karen, and Don Calfa. Number 5, Horror Express, 1972. The year is 1906, and the setting is in a Trans-Siberian train. Our protagonist is an anthropology professor named Sir Alexander Saxton. The expedition turns deadly when he brings on board the frozen remains of a humanoid creature, and Professor Saxton believes it to be the missing link in human evolution. Soon they discover that the creature isn't a link between apes and humans, but an alien that landed on Earth in the Cenozoic age. The alien can get into the passengers' minds, absorb their intelligence, and even butchers humans. Doesn't this sound a bit like John Carpenter's The Thing? Nevertheless, now it is up to our protagonist Sir Alexander Saxton and his companion Dr. Wells to survive the deathly apocalypse of the creature on the Horror Express. As Scott Tobias noted, Horror Express nimbly cycles through genres, with drawing room mystery and procedural elements bleeding into universal-style monster effects and science fiction hokum. This small-scale Spanish production directed by Eugenio Martin is a perfect horror movie for chilling nights. The movie delivers well on the scares, and the musical score enhances the spooky tone of the film. The Horror Express cast some of the best from the Spanish cinema, but starred Christopher Lee as Professor Alexander Saxton, and Peter Cushing as Dr. Wells as the main cast. Number 6, The Vampire Lovers, 1970. Mircalla Karnstein belonged to the vampire Karnstein family, but a vengeful Baron Joachim von Hartog staked and killed everyone in the family, except her. Several years later, Mircalla has changed her name to Marcilla, and is now imposing as a countess's daughter. After meeting Laura, the niece of General Spilsdorf, Marcilla stays as a guest in Laura's house, and soon Laura grows weaker and paler. She is soon diagnosed with anemia. After her death, Marcilla disappears, and the doctors find 2 puncture wounds on her breast. Marcilla's next target is Emma, for which she changes her name to Carmilla. However, Emma's father Baron Hartog and General Spilsdorf learn about Carmilla's well-kept secret.
A woman, a very beautiful.
Director Roy Ward Baker follows a bold plot, showcasing seduction, lesbianism, and a solid female lead, something that almost surprised Hollywood back in the day. It also follows a copy-pasted formula of a vampire genre movie, which includes killings, stakes, beheadings, and blood, a whole great deal of blood. Peter Cushing and Ingrid Pitt maintain an impressive performance as the film progresses towards the climax. The film is evident with its message, it is bloody and entertaining. These were our picks for the essential B movies that you will love. Do let us know which ones you're gonna watch, and leave a comment on which one is your favorite.